Hello, and welcome back to Bus Stops. I'm your host, Nick. We have a lot of pictures of bus stops to talk about. The title of this episode won't be determined until I land on a picture, so let's go ahead and get into it. Random roll of the dice. Gonna arrive at a picture of uncertain specificity, and I'm gonna close my eyes and stop. All right, so this is one of the more interesting pictures, I think. This was taken downtown, as you might well imagine, with the scaffolding and the bricks and the guard booth of some sort. There's a lot going on in this picture, and so I think we'll be talking about this one for a little bit longer. This was the federal courthouse, I believe, of Richmond. We can see it says court, a little tag of a U right there, perhaps, but nonetheless, it is a courthouse. I love this picture. This is one of my more interesting pictures in this series, I think. So I'm happy to be able to talk about it. I remember positioning myself in such a particular way that the tiniest sliver of light was visible at the end of this scaffolding netting tunnel, which is mysterious nonetheless. There's a lot of things that sort of suck your eye into that left hand side of the frame. Basically, these little spray paint marks kind of draw your eye from right to left, and then these lights right there along the top reinforce that line, and your eye is brought in to the depths, the unknown depths. You have a little arrow right here that kind of closes the loop of that little circle right there. And really, for as much interesting stuff is going on in other places of this picture, it's almost impossible for me to look away from this dark tunnel. And nonetheless, there are other interesting things going on. I think that these, I guess that's a different type of netting, kind of an orangish netting right there. It actually like follows that line really nicely. And so there's almost a triangle that's formed between those objects. There's like a weird thing that happens to my eye with this little prism of darkness right there. And it is almost that it starts to kind of flip out inside itself, where this tiniest sliver of light right here is nonetheless slightly out of focus. And so there is a kind of a strange inversion of space that happens there at the end of that, where if I had just moved the camera, merest inches to the left, then really we would have lost that effect, because it just would have been a dark void completely. But I did want to kind of allow depth to permeate that space, to come out of that space and then flip out in some ways. Because quite honestly, the kind of plane of the netting around the scaffolding that, kind of cuts the picture in half, essentially, that's just below the halfway mark of the image there, is kind of that faux horizon where the scaffolding netting comes down and lands at the intersection of that dark brick and light brick. There is this shield almost that cuts the image in half and kind of obfuscates the vast majority of everything that's behind it. And so I thought that this tunnel was a rather interesting opportunity to flip that inside out in a lot of ways. We have two different types of brick, two different, types of... It is kind of interesting in that regard how that scaffolding netting kind of comes down almost exactly, but not exactly, almost, but not exactly in line with the changing surfaces of the road, where we do have this kind of crisscross, dark, monochromatic brick on one side, and then the more variegated colors of brick on the other side. Actually, really, those are just two different colors of brick, dark and light. We do have some variance in the exact darkness of this type of brick. They're like slightly darker bricks, slightly lighter bricks, whereas like these are really just two different colors of brick. But anyway. And then we have concrete on the left side there, dark stain, dirt, something. We have like a plastic bag breaking up that field a little bit. But and then really, let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Construction area keep out. that is probably the brightest, maybe apart from, looks like maybe just a touch of sky, but even that's peeking through the netting. These lights are rather bright right there, but then this is like the single brightest thing in the image. And so there's this really funky, piercing brightness that happens right there that is almost visually brighter and more foregrounded than the lights. So we have this weird step between these two objects. You see this kind of lumpy mass right there, and then this more defined danger, peligro sign right there. So that draws the eye over to the right side of the frame for me. And then you have even this this keypad or some sort of cutout in the mesh right there where you see a camera and a keypad, and then obviously that is a guard booth. So you see another camera up here, which then also looks like it has sort of a mesh, or is cut through the mesh rather, to allow the camera to do its function. You see like an opening here as well, so we can enter the guard booth despite all of the extra bits right there. And so yeah, just a lot going on. We see these awesome like slanting lines, so kind of cross bracing on the scaffolding right there, coming down right up to left down, right up to left down, and then we see like another opposing movement right there, some like steeper cross bracing right there. And so like just the number of lines in this image is kind of blowing my mind. Like, now that said, you know, I can't just be entirely objective and observational here. I did make this picture, and so to my mind, like, there gets to be a bit of chaos in this image. There's like a little bit too much going on, and so it's kind of hard to not, like, anytime you, at least for me, I think a lot of maybe landscape photographers are the same, that anytime there's like a large scale mesh or anything which partially hides or alters the view into something, nonetheless allows some definition of what's behind it, but kind of overall changes the character of the view, I think that is attractive to landscape photographers, architectural photographers, fine art, whatever you want to call it. So that was, I think, sort of the first thing that drew me to this scene at this particular bus stop. I felt some urgency and some excitement in composing this particular image, and all that to say is I surely don't think that I would have chosen anything else from this particular vantage point, given what was in front of me. This isn't a critique so much as kind of an open-ended reflection on if I could have possibly brought myself to photograph anything else. I think the answer is no. But nonetheless, there is like strange amounts of chaos in this image, despite sort of the fussiness and the rigidity of the composition. I think it's balanced pretty well on all sides. You know, have kind of a corner here, a corner element there, even this tiny little bit of brick here in this corner, which is a little sloppy. I'd probably, well, you know, you can't quite crop that out without losing some other stuff. But yeah, corner here, then this blue, this banner, which of course we got to read this, which, by the way, the R5, just chef's kiss worth of resolution and sharpness for all you camera nerds out there. Project funded by President Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, Investing in America. So that was news to me when I photographed this, that Joe Biden brought us a new courthouse or something. So that was, quite honestly, you know, we had an election, we had all the politics stuff that I'm sure no one wants to talk about when hearing about photography at bus stops, but that was pretty recent here in the U.S. And, you know, listen to all my 538 politics podcast talking about the Inflation Reduction Act being part of a major component of Joe Biden's legacy, for better or worse. And so it was interesting. I remember making this photograph and seeing old JB's name up there and thinking to myself, okay, well, thanks, Biden, I guess. We got a nicer courthouse, I suppose. Yeah, neither here nor there, but part of the purpose of this series is to represent the breadth of what's possible to see in the landscape on a day in, day out basis. And so obviously the political, the judicial, those are components of the life of a city. And so even how the national program leaks down or trickles down or whatever you want to call it into civic life in a small city like Richmond, Virginia. Certainly worth considering. So I think that's about all the Joe Biden mention we're ever going to get in this particular series right there. I largely refrained from photographing a lot of political signage, which of course was doing this series during the election as well. So I think that's all JB comes up. So that's what we got. But yeah, here we go. Courthouse. Not too much more to say about this image. I think it does have a nice mood to it. Just overall, my impression of it is moody. I think guard booths and security cameras are obviously an easy visual symbol to reach for when representing the government or representing surveillance state, whatever you want to call it. Here we are at the side of the road at a bus stop, and this is what we get. We get a big old renovation project funded by President Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. So for better or worse, there it was. I don't know if it's still going on. I made this probably a good 7-8 months ago. So I will say, just in closing, I haven't mentioned it yet, but this drives me nuts. If you want to talk about takeaways from this series, I think if I were to re-edit this photo, and I might even do that, I would probably either crop that out completely or maybe I might slide the frame to the right slightly, which I will do after I finish recording. But I think I like that stop light thing in there, but it needs to not be cut off. So that was one of the pickiest things that my photo professors always harped on us for, was just making sure that the edges of the frame are tidy. So when you have stuff like this, just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of brick or something where it's bright and identifiable, it is what it is, in a visual sense. And yet nonetheless, it is just cut off in a very unsatisfying way by the frame. It's like this being cut off by the frame, no problem. This sign even being cut off by the frame, no problem. But when you have something like this that isn't, it's just kind of tangential to the edge of the frame is how I think about it. That drives me nuts. And that is a pickiness that is born out of 4 years of fine art photographic education. So you can take that to the bank. Pay close attention to the edges of your frame, people. Thanks for listening to my talk about this bus stop. Thank you.